I think we are live. Hello and good morning, everyone who's joining us from the United States West Coast. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes, probably one or two, while we wait for the rest of the attendees to go ahead and trickle in. Very excited to meet you virtually today. We're going to be introducing quite a few fun topics focused around bringing social gaming, to every device through Unity using Dolby I/O. Let's go ahead and wait one more minute. I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, trying to get to know everyone a little bit better. So it should be populating on your screen momentarily. Go ahead and give us an answer. Where are you located? North America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pacific, or somewhere else? I don't know geography very well, so if I didn't list where you are, I apologize. All right, everyone's joining us from North America. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. That's Canada, United States, and I believe Mexico. Braden, is that correct? Can you confirm my geography?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, JC.
Yeah, and from your accent, I can tell you're not from North America. Is that correct, Braden?
Yes, I'm actually from Australia. So if we do have
Oh,
any Australians joining, please vote in the poll. I need to know.
awesome. Well, you could have marked A and Z if you had been an attendee rather than a presenter, Braden.
Next time, I'll launch like a separate one and go in and vote.
Excellent. All right, guys, we are at 10:01. I'm going to wait one more minute before kicking off today's presentation. While we wait that minute, I'm going to get my screen share prepped and ready. So if you just see me fumbling around my screen and sharing random stuff that's not the presentation, I apologize. I'll get it right on the second or third try. Kablam! All right, I'm seeing 10:02 on my phone, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to look at how to bring social gaming to every device by streaming within Unity using the Dolby I/O platform. Very excited to introduce this topic to you all today. But before we begin, I want to serve a quick public service announcement. Number one, this presentation will be recorded. So if you don't want to go on the public record making an off-color joke in the public chat, please don't go do that, as we are going to be pushing this recording on our public-facing website and maybe our YouTube channels and social media as well. Number two, please submit questions during today's presentation and workshop. We will be having a Q&A at the end of today's webinar and hopefully be able to work through any of the questions that you have. We're probably going to try to answer those questions in real time through the chat, but in case we aren't unable to do that, we will get to them at the end of today's presentation. Number three, feedback is a gift, and we especially value your feedback. You're taking the time to join, learn what we're talking about today. So please, after the webinar, let us know how you did. Reach out to us through social media, reach out to us on our LinkedIn, reach out to us just by going to our website and filling in a contact form. How did we do on today's webinar? Did we answer your questions? Should we or can we change the format of these presentations and workshops to better educate our viewers? Thank you so much. All right, who we are. My name is Jonathan Calkins, but I go by JC, and I support product marketing here at the Dolby I/O platform. I am joined by two outstanding developer advocates on the Dolby I/O team. The first is Angelik Laboy, and the second is Braden Riggs. Both of these folks are going to be taking you through the meat and potatoes of today's presentations. So I encourage you, listen closely, ask lots of questions in that public chat. We're definitely going to take the time to read and then answer those questions either during or after today's presentation. So on that note, over to you, Braden. I think you're going to be kicking us off on today's webinar. Is that correct?
I will. I will. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, JC. Just in case anybody missed it, hi, my name is Braden Riggs. I'm a developer advocate on the Dolby I/O team. I'm joined here with my wonderful co-host and co-workshop runner, Angelik Laboy. And today we're going to be talking about bringing social gaming to every device on Unity with some of our really amazing Dolby.io APIs and plugins. Now, this is a workshop, so we are going to have an interactive portion to this where we're going to jump inside Unity and actually start playing around with these APIs. And we're going to get to that shortly. But in the meantime, while I'm doing a bit of context, if everybody could do me a great favor and make sure they have two things ready while I'm doing this presentation. The first one is a Dolby.io account. You'll need a Dolby.io account in order to interact with and use our APIs and game engine plugins. And you can find that at dolby.io. You'll see there's a sign up link in the top right corner. Angelik is also going to share a link in the chat for you to sign up with. And then the second part is having Unity open and ready to go. Now, this is a Unity workshop. So if you aren't familiar with Unity, that is going to be a pretty big portion of the workshop. But still hang around if you're like an Unreal developer or something like that, as we do have plugins for the Unreal Engine, and we can answer some questions around that later in the talk when we have time for Q&A. So with those two things ready, I can kind of dive into sort of talking a little bit about like, what do we mean by social gaming, right? Social gaming, don't we just mean multiplayer when we talk about that? So social gaming is kind of that interactive element of multiplayer, the communication between players. Now, a lot of multiplayer games have social gaming aspects, but not every single one of them, right? A great example of this is if you play multiplayer chess, you're kind of just playing against the other player. There's not that interactive social element to the experience. Now, there's two examples that I want to kind of call out in the social gaming space. The first one, for anybody that's familiar with multiplayer games, is Among Us. Among Us really took off in insane popularity back in 2020 when a lot of streamers started streaming it on Twitch. And it's a great example of like a social game. You have this social deduction element where you have to find the imposter or the odd one out, the deceptive person in the crowd. And it's a game that heavily relies on the communication between players. Now, what's really interesting about using Among Us as an example is that it had no built-in chat feature. So when a lot of streamers played this online, they actually had to have two apps. They had to have Discord open on one side, and then they had to have the game open on the other. Discord to communicate between their friends, and then the actual game to play the experience. And this is a two-app experience. You're already adding a lot of friction to your end user if you're making them have like two accounts in order to experience something. Now, Among Us is a bit of an older example, so I wanted to call out Goose Goose Duck. For anybody that's heard about it, it's a very, very similar kind of game. It's, again, social deduction, heavily relies on communication between players, and you're trying to find the duck amongst the gooses or the geese. And that's a great example because even though Among Us is a little older, Goose Goose Duck actually recently surpassed Among Us's all-time player count, showing that there's still a lot of appetite in the community for these kinds of games and experiences. Now, another example of social gaming that I wanted to call out is the Travis Scott Fortnite concert. Again, this happened a few years ago, and this was an example where Fortnite wanted to put on a live in-game event for their audience so that players could come together, experience music, interact with each other, and increase the overall number of players in the game experience, players hanging out with each other, and the connection between the user and the Fortnite experience. And this was really interesting because this was a real-time concert, right? It had to happen live. Travis Scott was doing his performance, and the players in the game experience were all experiencing that as it happens. Now, even though these two examples between Goose Goose Duck and Fortnite are like very different games, one thing that they share in common with these social experiences is that these experiences have to happen in real time. You cannot have any kind of delay. As soon as that Fortnite concert becomes asynchronous, right? Well, then you're not going to have all these players coming together and interacting and enjoying the experience live. And as soon as you have a game like Goose Goose Duck where players can't communicate in real time with one another, then all of a sudden the whole point of the game, the social deduction aspect, becomes a lot less compelling and a lot less interesting to the end user. And this is where Dolby I/O comes in. So Dolby I/O is part of Dolby, and you might be familiar with Dolby from things like Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Dolby I/O is Dolby's developer platform. So what that means is we have a number of APIs and SDKs that can help create these compelling in-game experiences, or experiences for apps or experiences for web pages. We're not necessarily just in the gaming space, but that is a big part of it. We can bring these real-time communication things for players to enjoy and experience together. Now, specifically, we have a couple of different APIs. Angelik's going to talk about another one in a second, but I'm going to focus, and this workshop's going to focus on our streaming APIs. So we have an ultra low latency streaming CDN that allows us to take audio and video content from one location to another with really, really low delay. And to complement this CDN, we have a number of game engine plugins for both Unity and Unreal, as well as APIs and SDKs for people that want to build these experiences in the browser or build their own game engines or build like native apps and stuff like that. And so what our streaming APIs can do is they can actually stream audio and video content into a game experience. So you can imagine if you have an orchestra playing, you could set up some cameras for the orchestra and stream that experience into a game engine. And then we also have a number of APIs that can set up cameras inside of the gaming experience and stream that out. So you can imagine if you have some kind of AR, VR type experience inside the game engine and somebody wants to be able to join from their phone, well, you can take that experience and stream it into the phone so that players can still enjoy and interact with and engage with the players that might be wearing headsets or have more powerful hardware. And that's really what we mean when we say building for every device. Dolby I/O is very cross-platform, and all this technology you see can be enabled on all kinds of devices using the power of the browser or using some of the underlying hardware on the device. We have a lot of technology that integrates with all this stuff. Now, to give a bit better of an example of what we mean when we talk about like streaming into the game engine, here's an example of a game Angelik and I put together. Angelik's actually playing it right now, where we're actually streaming content into those little TVs that you see on screen. And you can see Angelik is also streaming a view of her webcam into the game engine as well. And this was actually a little project that we did for GDC. And you'll see some kind of things like player counts up in the top right corner or proximity detection as players get closer to the TV. That technology is actually powered by PubNub, which also enables a lot of real-time communication experiences. And so we put this experience together at GDC and we showed it off to kind of highlight some of our technology and how we're able to enable this sort of stuff. So ahead of this workshop, we're actually going to be showing you how you can stream into the game engine and how you can stream out of the game engine. So it's very exciting. Now I'm going to hand it over to Angelik for a second to kind of talk about one of our other APIs.
Yeah, thank you, Braden. So essentially, the other API that we have is actually about spatial chat. And what I mean by that is essentially that audio is now coming all around you instead of at you at the beginning, right? So in this case, you really get to build this dynamic multiplayer experience where you're able to have like better collaboration just by communicating depending on the sectors that people are at. And so the other talk that we had at GDC kind of focused about the history of how we got into that point, and also looking at stuff like accessibility and the ability of allowing individuals to experience it the same across the board. So instead of just having somebody have the text be like the door is next to you, you can actually hear the door being next to you. We're not particularly going to cover this in this workshop. However, for those interested, we did record those talks. We can share them out later, and that kind of like guides you more of like how do you build it for your own experience. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Angelique. One other thing I want to touch on before we get into actually building is who is using Dolby IO, right? This technology, whilst being very new, is not untested. We have a number of customers that are using both the spatial audio APIs that Angelique was just talking about, as well as the streaming APIs that we're going to play with shortly. Two of these examples I want to call out, very different in nature, but very cool to see. The first one is Red Pill VR. Now, what Red Pill VR is it's a virtual mixed reality concert experience. And DJs can come into this world and do performances for a live audience that can wear headsets. But a certain portion of the audience cannot or does not own the hardware required to join the game experience. And so Red Pill want to enable these experiences for the widest possible audience. And so they use our APIs to actually set up cameras in the experience and stream out really high quality audio and video streams to the users that are watching on their phones or the users that are watching just on computers or tablets and the such. And what was really interesting is Red Pill VR wanted this experience to feel as immersive as possible. And the problem that they were running into was the fact that when they streamed this content, there was a lot of delay in the stream before they switched to Dolby IO. And with all that delay in the stream, it was hard for people to make song requests. It was hard for the performer, the artist, to really feel like they were performing to an audience when that audience wasn't reacting when they played a song or wasn't reacting when he said, "Oh, how's everyone's night going?" And so by enabling a really, really low delay streaming experience, which is what we can enable with some of our APIs, it was able to make that experience a lot more compelling. It was allowing users who were watching at home to request songs. It was allowing users in game to jump and show excitement when a really fun song comes on. And just overall, it made that experience feel like a little bit more immersive without, having all this delay and none of that fun stuff. The other example I want to call out is Odyssey. So Odyssey is a virtual meeting experience that you can run inside of a browser or on certain kinds of like other tools. And what's really cool about Odyssey is that they're trying to create this next generation of virtual meeting experiences. And for that to actually work, people inside this experience need to have really low delay, high quality communication. But the communication should also be immersive. And a bit what Angelique was talking about before, we have some spatial audio APIs that allows players to talk to each other without it sounding like the audio is flat and just coming at you. Rather, that audio comes from around you. So if someone comes up behind you and talks to you, you can hear that it's coming from behind you. Now, additionally, you can also see in the GIF on screen right now that they're using our streaming APIs as well. This is for people that can't join that game experience, or when they need to do a presentation, or when someone needs to share their screen or something like that. Having the ability to stream that in, again, with like really low delay, allows people to collaborate in a productive manner. So two really exciting examples. Now that's enough of me kind of talking about our APIs and stuff like that. I think it's a good opportunity to jump in and get started with the Dolby IO platform. So hopefully by now, everybody's had a chance to sign up for an account. If everybody's been able to sign up for an account, can you just send an emoji in the chat, a thumbs up or something like that, just so I know that you're there? And let me switch across. Great, I'm seeing some thumbs up in the chat. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing, and I'm going to share the documentation. So before I jump into going through our dashboard and everything, I just wanted to make a quick call out for our documentation. So just in case you miss some stuff or you can't stay for the whole workshop, this is our documentation. It is comprehensive. So if you are interested in anything to do with our Unity or Unreal Engine plugins or just any of our other SDKs, you can come over to docs.dolby.io. Now for the spatial audio plugin that Angelik was talking about before, that is in our communications API section. So if you come to docs.dolby.io, you can just click on either one of these to get to either Unity or Unreal or Unity. Today, we're going to be focusing on the streaming APIs. So it's the exact same thing. You can click getting started here and you'll see we have our Unity plugins that walk you through getting started and our Unreal Engine plugins. So just in case, we cover a bunch of stuff and you don't get a chance to ask your question or you're missing something, these are some resources that we do have available for you here. Now, additionally, I'm going to share out the dashboard. Now, I got a lot of thumbs up in the chat, so I'm assuming everybody was able to create an account. When you create an account, a Dolby.io account for the first time, you're going to get dropped off on the dashboard. Now, the dashboard is how you manage the credentials for connecting up to the Dolby.io servers. And there's two parts to it. There's the communication and media credentials over here on the dashboard, and there's the streaming credentials. Now, for this workshop, we're not going to worry about the communication and media credentials. We're going to focus on the streaming credentials. And if you just created this account for the first time, you're not going to see anything here. But what these are all my tokens that I'm using for managing various streams inside of game engines or for other applications that I have. And for this project, you're going to want to go ahead and create a new token by clicking the Create button in the upper left corner here. Now, there's a lot of different settings that you can play around with these tokens, whether you need to make sure certain streams don't go into certain countries, or whether you want to block specific IPs, or whether you want to lock down your stream so not anybody can actually view it. You need special credentials to view it. That's kind of a lot of what you're seeing in these token settings. And we can touch on that a little bit later in the Q&A. But for the moment, we're just going to focus on creating a very basic example. And so the two things that you need to do when creating this token is to give it a name. So I'm going to call this Unity Demo. And you're also going to need to click on the Allow Any Stream Name button. Now, this is important because as we start playing around inside the game engine, you're going to want to be able to dynamically create streams from inside of Unity. And what that means is these streams might have names that you've either defined inside the game engine or names that you're going to automatically generate or programmatically generate from within the game engine. So by allowing any stream name, it just keeps things simple for us. It just means that what you name it inside the game engine is going to work. Now, if you click confirm, wonderful. We now have a Unity demo token, and we can click out and we can see it in the list right here, Unity demo. We can click in. Now, this is a lot of different credentials. You can also manage stuff from inside this token, like recording the streams. And it does seem really daunting at first, but don't worry. We're mainly just going to be using things like the publishing token right here, or the account ID, or the stream name. But if you'll remember, we set our stream name to accept any value, so it's just an asterisk for the moment. Now, a few cool things that I want to call out from the dashboard is you can actually test and broadcast from the dashboard. So as you can see right now, I just, from the dashboard, clicked on the broadcast button, and it opened up this player. And with this player, you can play around with some settings. You can test different codecs, different resolutions, and you can directly stream from the dashboard. So there's no need to build yourself a whole different broadcasting app. You can actually do some of that stuff from here really easily. And if you began
Braden,
broadcasting, yeah?
we don't see the tab that you're talking about.
Oh, whoops. Thanks for letting me know, Angelik. Let's see. Here we go. There we go. So thank you for letting me know, Angelik. Yeah, so from the dashboard, if you hit that broadcast button, it'll take you out to our player. And from here, it's pretty straightforward. You can hit start to start a stream. You can go over to the settings over here and test out different codecs and different resolutions. And this is a great way to test these experiences that you've built without having to build your own broadcaster or anything like that. So that's to broadcast from the dashboard. You can also actually view from the dashboard too. So if I share my screen again, you'll see the playback tab here, and you'll have a hosted player path. Now, right now, it just says your publish name, because again, when we defined our token stream, we said it accepts any stream name. But it's going to be important to remember that when you do give your stream a name, like, Unity experience in the game engine, you'll need to replace your publish name with Unity game experience. But when you do that, you can actually copy this URL, and just like the broadcaster I showed before, you're actually able to stream into or you're able to view a stream coming from the game engine. So both these tools are really useful for being able to test out what we're about to walk through in the workshop and play around and kind of experience and see what we mean when we say we have a low latency streaming CDN. So with all of that, I think everybody's probably heard enough from me. I'm going to hand it over to Angelik to actually get us inside of Unity and start playing around with these APIs.
Well, thank you, Braden. Let's see how this goes. Okay. Cool. So yes, hope everybody's having a lovely time. Braden just walked you through the dashboard, and so I'm gonna be the person who's gonna walk you through how do you do this essentially in less than 5 minutes within Unity. The first thing that we're gonna need is actually for you guys to either scan this QR code or just write out this like GitHub. This is essentially our link that we're gonna need in order to add the plugin into our package manager. So I'm just gonna leave it here for a few seconds. So you guys have a little bit of time. Braden, if you can be so kind to drop it in the chat, that would also be really useful. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for sticking around and not to checking this out. I apologize for the technical issues that we had during the webinar. It wasn't our intention. However, to just get right into it, we left off in opening the GitHub, which actually contains our plugin. So you can either scan this QR code or just go directly into this link. Either one works, right? So I'm just going to click into it. And now that we're here. So first thing is first, we're gonna now go into our Unity Hub. Once we're in Unity Hub, we're gonna create a new project. And here I'm gonna select the third person template. It can be any type of version. I'm just selecting this one. And I'm gonna write it down. So workshop V2. And make sure that it's in a location that you can actually detect for later in case you wanna work back on it. So I'm gonna create it. It's gonna take a few seconds for the token, for the template to actually load. So I'm just gonna let that load, and I'm gonna go back into my Dolby.io dashboard. I know Braden went through this and iterated it, but for some of you that got lost in creating the token, I'm just gonna do that with you guys since I haven't created one. So first thing is first, I gotta make sure I'm in the streaming dashboard. So once I'm here, I'm gonna click in here in order to create a token. And there's two things you need to do here. You're gonna need to name it whatever you like. I'm gonna name it Unity Day. And I'm gonna make sure that it is allow any type of stream name. This allows the capability of utilizing only one stream token and then just using it across the board of everything that we're gonna be doing, both publishing in and out of the experience. In advanced settings, you see more things like specific cluster regions that you can select from. So what CDN would you like to travel from? And the same thing with geo-blocking. I don't want a specific country to see my view. You can also do that, as well as IP addresses. So I'm going to confirm that. Now that we're inside, we're going to be using the account ID and the publishing token. Great thing about it is that you can actually just renew this publishing token if you feel that it has been exposed before. But for now, it should all be good. Other things that are able to do is actually enable the record button whenever you're broadcasting, as well as allow it to be a secure viewer. So we can do this at the end, but it essentially allows for more security in terms of like who's watching your stream, who has access to it, and just only giving those people with that token or that password to view your stream. And so the last thing I will have to iterate before I go back into the engine to see if it works is going on playback. We're actually going to be using this hosted player path, and this is where we're going to be viewing if the live stream has gone out. And it seems like my playground has loaded. I'm just going to move it into here so you guys can see it. And voila, we're inside the engine with the template. If we just do a quick test, I could just click play on the top, and then I can run around with the shift. I can jump, I can move around similarly to a video game and having a Cinemachine brain kind of following my character around. So I'm going to stop the stream, and what we're going to do first is actually go into Windows, the package manager, and I need to go back into Google in order to copy in the code the HTTPS. Copy that, going back into Unity, and then on the plus icon on top, I'm going to add package from get URL. I'm going to paste it in, and that, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary folks, is our plugin and how you install it. You're going to see this name very particularly, which is called Melicast. Melicast is actually the technology that is powering our streaming solution before Dolby decided to acquire, and so now it's part of the Dolby IO family. Another great thing is that if you wanted to play around with it and kind of wanted to see more of like the scenes, the sample scenes that we created, you can click here and then just import it in. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm not going to do that, and I'm actually going to do something a little bit more dynamic than that. That already has the components pre-built. I'm going to teach you how do you go from nothing to everything, right? So now that that's done, I can close it down. I'm gonna switch my perspective to the game view just to understand where things are from. And in my assets folder, I'm gonna create a new folder called credentials. So right click here, create, and then folder, credentials. And this is where we're gonna save all the information in order to tie your plugin to understand that it is your specific Dolby IO account. And again, I'm gonna need to create two assets. Right click again, create, and on top you're gonna see Melicast. That's how you know that your plugin got properly installed. If not, go back into it, update it, or reinstall it. So, and make sure that it's the HTTPS, right? In here is the credentials, that's one of them, and the other one being our video configuration. Perfect. In the credentials is essentially the account ID and the published token, what is required, right? So go back into my Dolby IO account. I go into the specific stream token, right? So my token information is in token details. I'm gonna copy the account ID, and I'm gonna go back into my Unity, paste that in, and same thing with the published token. And voila, we're done with that, right? At the end, this is where you would attach your subscribe token in order to make your streaming secure. For now, we're not going to do that. We can probably do it at the end. Last thing is our video configuration. And this is more if you're a camera person, a filmmaker, you might actually recognize these names, the codecs, the resolution, and you can actually select something from VP8, VP9, AV1, 8264, any type of codec you can go from. I'm just going to particularly do AV1. And then last thing, the resolution being 720p to 4K. I'm gonna do 4K. Same thing with the quality settings being the frame rate, what min and max, bit rate, if I want to scale it down or not. But that should be everything in order to have us set up and ready to go in order to make a stream out, because that's the first thing that we're gonna do. So if we look at our left side, you're gonna see playground. And in playground, we have the main camera, right? I can close down all this, the transform, the camera, and then also the Cinemachine. If I add the component, I can write in Mac Publisher, and this is what is allowing me to stream out. Now, first thing is first, I'm gonna put down the things that I already know. So my credentials goes in credentials, and my video configuration goes in video configuration. Now, it says use audio listener as source. This is essentially giving you the ability that whatever the camera listens to is what the audio is going to be streaming into the Dolby IO viewer experience. If you don't want that, then I would recommend selecting off your audio listener right here. If you do, kind of sort of like this POV perspective, then you select this here, right? My video source is going to be my main camera. And in the sense of the audio source, we don't actually, oops, gotta make sure I selected it. There you go. In sense of my audio source, I'm not gonna select anything. If you wanted to play specific background music or anything that substitutes the audio listener, then you can place that in, and that could be sort of like the ears to your camera, right? And then the very important thing is the publish on start. When I click this off, it allows for whenever I start my engine experience to actually start streaming in my Dolby IO account. So gotta make sure that is on. And then I left the stream name for last because I told you guys that you need to do any type of stream name. You can write anything here. You just gotta make sure that it is whatever you use whenever you're doing the hosted player path or when you're telling the URL that, hey, I'm trying to view this specific thing. I'm gonna do publishing out, right? And so I'm not gonna basically like put this side by side so you guys can see the magic that's about to happen. If I go into my playback, I copy the hosted player path and I paste it into the new tab. It's gonna say your published name, and it is the stream name that you wrote down. So my publishing out, there you go. And it's not gonna say anything, or it's not gonna show anything, it's just saying not live right now, right? If I click in here, and I do the beautiful thing of just walking around. Voila, it just starts streaming. Sometimes if it doesn't start, just refresh the links. It just takes a few seconds, I guess, to detect it. And you guys can see right now the latency at which is running from, how great of a fidelity it is, and reliability. Not take it just because I'm saying it, but more because if I were to click on the gear here and look at my media stats, is doing a 35 millisecond round trip, 30, and it's going to Phoenix. So it's from San Francisco, where I'm located right now, to Phoenix and back, and that is the resolution being consistent, how like we're not getting any package loss right now, a little bit of a video jitter, and same codec and server that we just stipulated. So great, you just did the first thing, right? Now, if I stop my experience, because I told you, publish on start basically enables and disables this. It stops streaming. Now, let's go amplify this again. And now we're going to be able to stream something into the experience. So for that, I actually need to create a 3D object. You can select anything in here. You can even select that wall and like apply it to it. The way that it works is as a material. So because of that material, we're actually streaming into that, which means that anything that has that particular material is able to feature that streaming. You guys will see what I'm talking about. For this, I'm going to create a new object. So right click on the hierarchy on the side, and I'm going to do a 3D object. I'm going to do let's do a cube. Why not? There you go. I can leave the same name. Let's move it so you guys can see it more clearly. There you go. Move forward. Voila. I can close down all these components. And we're actually going to add the new component of not Mac publisher, Mac subscriber. And this is streaming in, right? We can do a couple things that are easy, right? We know our credentials. We can drag and drop it. We can also select it from the drop down, you see? And then subscribe on start. We know that we want to start subscribing whenever we start the experience overall. I'm going to write down a stream name. So the other one was publishing out. This is publishing in. And we're going to need a material and an audio source, right? So first thing is first, you can add this material wherever your materials are allocated. Just for the sake of this video, I'm going to place it in the same folder as the credentials. So right click here, create, and then material. I'm going to name this video render. And I can actually select any type of color. So I can do a little bit of a tint, orangey kind of stuff. It doesn't have to have a specific color. If you leave it blank, your video will look the same. right now I'm just basically going to be applying kind of like a color grading effect on my video stream. And I'm going to drop this video render on top of the cube. And voila, you see that the cube right now has that color, which means that it has the material sign. If I go back into my cube, I got to make sure that I select that within my max subscribers so it knows that it is streaming into that specific material. You're going to have millions of materials. You can just write it down, video render. Voila. There you go. Select it. Now, the last thing would be my audio source. Now, that is essentially saying that whatever the camera is picking up as my audio is going to stream into the experience in itself. So I got to make sure that that cube has it almost attached to its surroundings, right? You can place this above if you wanted to. Again, stylistic choices. I'm just going to place it in the center. For that reason, I'm going to right click on my cube and click in the audio and then audio source, right? That just created as a child. So here we're actually looking at the component of audio source. I'm going to do it in the spatial blend going from 2D to 3D, right? From there, you're actually going to be able to, you can select as many settings as you would like, right? However, I want my minimum and my max distance to be a little bit shorter. I don't want to be like really far away still hearing that audio because it's all about position and directionality. So if I click here, I can actually edit it. So something more like 20, 10, something more like restrain is in the radius that is projecting out. Let's do 15. Why not? You can write any number you like. You can see the logarithmic graph. Now that we have that, I go back into my cube, to my subscriber, and in the render audio source, I'm going to add a new element and select it. And voila. You can rename this even to make it more specific for you. You can put like audio source cube, right? So that when you're looking for it, you actually know that it is the one from the cube. And that is all, honestly. Again, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller so you guys can see. Now, the next things are gonna happen within our Dolby I/O dashboard. So if I go back into the same token that I just created, make sure that it is on the live subscriber as this broadcast. I'm gonna click broadcast on that token. In the broadcast, I gotta make sure that you actually change this name right here, which is the stream name. So I wrote down publishing in, so I gotta type it in. And you see that just because I click enter doesn't change anything. This is actually your stream name still, so I gotta make sure I actually refresh this. And you know it is changed because it says it right here. And there we go. I'm gonna activate my camera and there you go, and start the stream. Now we started the stream. That means that whenever that game experience starts, I'm actually going to be able to stream in the experience. And voila, I'm upside down because it's a cube and you can change this relative to how you would like. I can also look around, see myself there. There you go. Again, you can still see the latency, which is being like projected out. This is just like taking all faces of the cube. And something really cool in Meta is that I can actually go back into the live viewer that I had. And what did I say? It is already streaming out. And so with this change of it being like, hey, I'm projecting in a video while simultaneously like streaming out another one, you can see that perspective too. And so that's basically all. I'm gonna actually show you guys how to do the secure viewer just for those that might want to check it out a little bit later. So for that, I'm gonna go into credentials, the asset that I created, and it's empty, right? So if I go back into my Dolby I/O account, my dashboard, I'm gonna see other things on the side, especially the subscribe token. So if I go in here, I'm gonna have to create a new one. Ignore the ones that I have, just create a new one. So Unity Day V2, right? Because we already selected this as any type of stream name, it's actually not going to show up in here. You're not going to be able to detect it. So you got to make sure that your subscribe token is also any type of stream name. Selected that off, and then voila. If I go inside of it, it's actually going to give me this token. This token is what I'm going to need in order to go back into the engine and paste it there. But this token is actually very important because even if you place it in there and you don't make your stream secure, it's not going to do anything. So I have to go into my stream token again, right? And I got to make sure that on the token details on the bottom, you actually select off the the secure viewer. Now, when I go back into this, even if I decide to do, where is it? Oops. Even if I decide to start my stream, let's see if anything happens. Nothing's happening, right? Because I made it secure now. Okay, so I gotta close this down and I gotta go into my playback, copy this in, paste it. It's gonna ask for two informations, right? It's gonna ask for your publishing name, and we know what that is, right? Is the publishing out or whatever you wrote, publishing out, and my subscribe token. So if I go back into my dashboard, click on the subscribe token, the token that you created, copy the token, paste it in, and click it in. Now it is streaming, and now we've made it secure in just a matter of steps. And there you go. You obviously don't hear anything, I'm assuming, just because I'm wearing my headphones in order to deliver this content. But if you wanted to, you can test it out in different ways. There's many different innovative solutions you can have. Like, for example, this character has a face. You can, because of the way that this material works, you can attach it directly to their face, stream through that. There's any sort of cool things that you can do to this experience that you should definitely check it out. So I'm gonna stop my stream here because we're finished. Now the last things I want to say is, if you want to connect with us, my name was Angelik Laboy Torres. Braden was my co-developer advocate in this experience. These are our handles if you want to check us out or messages with any sort of questions. As well as I mentioned, we do have another plugin surrounding spatial chat, and that's going to be available in a few weeks. Of how you can actually do it in a video format, and you can follow it through. It's very easy. And then if you scan that, that's actually going to be our documentation. So drop you back into what you guys need to know. But thank you so much. This was very lovely. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.